Imagine walking into your brightly lit modern bathroom right now. The bright white lights reflect off the pristine mirrors. You look down at the polished counter. You see a plastic toothbrush. You see a brightly colored tube of mini paste. You see a vibrant bottle of harsh mouthwash. You see a modern dispenser of liquid antibacterial soap. Since you were a tiny toddler, you have been carefully trained to view these specific manufactured items as absolute biological necessities for your daily survival. You have been heavily conditioned to believe that without these artificial chemical tools, your human body rapidly decays. You have been taught that without them you become a rotting, foul-smelling, completely unapproachable disaster. Because of this powerful modern conditioning, we naturally picture our ancient ancestors as filthy, desperate creatures. We imagine them with dark brown broken teeth. We imagine a dark cloud of unbearable physical stench following them wherever they went. Today we are going to completely dismantle this incredibly pervasive popular myth. We are going to replace those dark, gloomy assumptions with bright, sunlit biological realities. We will uncover a historical truth that is genuinely staggering. By the end of this journey, your understanding of human cleanliness will be permanently changed. Let us start with the teeth. The dental myth is arguably the most persistent misunderstanding in all of human prehistory. We incorrectly assume ancient people possessed terrible rotting teeth. Why do we think this? Because modern people rapidly develop terrible teeth if they stop brushing with chemical paste for even a few short weeks. But when archaeologists examine the excavated skulls of human beings who lived thousands of years before the invention of agriculture, they consistently find something shocking. They find something that deeply frustrates modern dental professionals. Ancient hunter-gatherers possessed remarkably straight, extraordinarily strong, and fully intact teeth. They had an incredibly low rate of cavities. How exactly did they manage this spectacular oral health without a single tube of modern fluoride paste? The secret answer lies entirely in what they were choosing to put into their bodies in the first place. Picture a bright, vibrant, prehistoric forest. Ancient human populations relied heavily on broad-spectrum foraging. They drew their daily caloric requirements from fresh wild meat, fish, crisp nuts, bright green wild plants, and vibrant sweet fruits. They were absolutely not eating the massive, unnatural amounts of refined sugar and heavily processed carbohydrates that form the unquestioned foundation of our modern industrialized diet. It was only when human populations transitioned to settled agriculture that everything collapsed. They artificially concentrated their entire caloric intake around just one or two dense staple crops like wheat or barley. Skeletal evidence recovered from early farming populations consistently shows significantly higher rates of dental disease. The sudden overwhelming influx of sticky, starchy agricultural carbohydrates provided the perfect constant fuel source for the naturally occurring bacteria inside the human mouth. These bacteria rapidly produced lactic acid, which steadily and aggressively dissolved tooth enamel over time. Before the agricultural revolution fundamentally rewired our relationship with food, the human mouth simply did not possess the constant lingering wash of sugar necessary to rot human teeth. Their bright, vibrant natural diet inherently protected their internal oral environment. But that biological fact absolutely does not mean they simply ignored oral hygiene. Across the ancient world, people realized that certain thin, pliable tree branches made absolutely perfect natural toothbrushes. They would carefully peel and mechanically fray one end of a bright green twig. They deliberately selected specific branches from plants and trees that contained naturally occurring antimicrobial botanical compounds. They possessed a profound, carefully accumulated knowledge of the complex chemical compounds that plants naturally produce for their own biological defense. They utilized these specific botanical tools to manually clean their teeth and stimulate their gums after meals. They were essentially using the bright living forest itself as a sophisticated, fully stocked dental pharmacy. Now we must entirely reframe our highly anxious modern understanding of what it actually means for a human body to be considered clean. Modern industrialized societies are completely obsessed with aggressively sterilizing every single physical surface we touch. We constantly use harsh antibacterial soaps. We scrub our delicate skin daily with hot chlorinated water. By doing this, we have actively and accidentally contributed to the systematic destruction of microbial diversity, both on and inside our own biological bodies. We have been taught to view all dirt and natural bacteria as the ultimate enemy of human health. But ancient humans were constantly and unapologetically covered in natural dirt and environmental bacteria. Biological research increasingly suggests that this continuous natural exposure was actually immunologically excellent for their long-term survival. Ancient humans possessed a spectacularly diverse gut and skin microbiome. They ate an incredibly varied, unrefined diet of wild plants and lived deeply embedded within the bright, chaotic natural world. Higher microbial diversity is consistently and strongly associated with better overall immune function. It leads to significantly lower rates of modern autoimmune diseases. Their skin was not simply a dirty passive surface waiting desperately to be scrubbed with synthetic chemicals. It was a complex, highly functioning, actively living ecosystem that successfully managed and regulated itself. The incredibly dense colonies of beneficial, naturally occurring bacteria living harmoniously on the surface of their skin actively outcompete harmful invading pathogens. They were undeniably visibly dirty by our strict modern standards, but biologically speaking, their skin was a deeply balanced and highly defended environmental barrier. Keeping the ancient body clean was ultimately about keeping the body alive and free from lethal, fast-moving infections. In a terrifying prehistoric landscape completely devoid of modern pharmacies, a simple infected cut on the arm could easily become a brutal death sentence. But ancient humans possessed an internal physical cleaning mechanism that modern science is only just beginning to fully appreciate once again. Their internal immune systems were extraordinarily capable. They were brutally shaped and violently sharpened by millions of years of relentless evolutionary pressure. The more diverse and dangerous pathogens an ancient population encountered over successive generations, the more the surviving individuals developed deep inherited immunological resistance. When they did inevitably sustain severe physical injuries, they utilized brilliant environmentally derived cleaning methods rather than artificial sterile chemicals. Ancient Egyptians extensively and deliberately applied bright golden raw honey directly to open bleeding wounds. This deeply traditional medical practice was absolutely not based on primitive superstition. Honey is genuinely and powerfully antibacterial. It possesses a naturally low potential of hydrogen and an incredibly high sugar content. It has the unique chemical ability to slowly release small amounts of hydrogen peroxide. This creates an overwhelmingly hostile environment for any invading bacteria attempting to colonize the exposed flesh. In other regions across the ancient globe, indigenous populations intentionally applied living fly larvae to severely infected and rotting wounds. This might sound like a nightmare today, but it was incredibly effective. They performed this procedure because they had patiently observed the bright natural world. They noticed that maggots specifically and exclusively consumed dead and decaying infected tissue, while leaving the healthy living tissue completely alone. They functioned essentially as remarkably efficient microscopic natural wound cleaning machines. When we consider how ancient humans gracefully managed the messy physical realities of their organic bodies, we must also address a universal biological reality. This reality profoundly affected half the human population continuously. For hundreds of thousands of years, ancient women expertly managed menstruation, without any of the brightly packaged disposable commercial products that modern society takes completely for granted today. Ancient Egyptian women living in a highly advanced, complex civilization likely utilized carefully softened papyrus plants as a primitive but highly effective natural absorbent material. In ancient Greece, women most likely utilized incredibly soft, highly absorbent, bright, white sheep wool. This was widely and cheaply available in a Mediterranean civilization heavily built around extensive sheep farming and textile production. Across many indigenous cultures throughout the world, women utilized soft, bright green, leaves tightly woven plant fibers, and specially prepared animal skins to manage their cycles. Sometimes they retreated together to dedicated spaces. These retreats were not enacted as a harsh, shameful punishment. They served as a socially recognized period of separate biological and spiritual focus. The overarching historical truth is that women were absolutely never passive, helpless victims of their own reproductive biology. They developed highly practical, incredibly sophisticated physical solutions to manage their bodily fluids effectively enough to continue living completely full, demanding, and highly active physical lives. But what about the physical odor of the human body itself? Surely a tight group of prehistoric humans living completely outside without access to hot pressurized showers smelled absolutely terrible to each other? To accurately answer this, we have to look closely at a bizarre, highly specialized evolutionary superpower of the human physical form. We are objectively not impressive sprinters when compared to the animal kingdom, but we are one of the absolute only large mammals on planet Earth, uniquely capable of cooling our entire internal body temperature primarily through rapid whole-body perspiration. We do not rely on the highly inefficient mechanism of panting. We slowly evolved millions of active sweat glands across our skin. Because our distant ancestors were elite, relentless persistence hunters, they were biologically designed specifically to run massive, terrified animals to total thermal exhaustion. They did this across wide, open, brightly lit landscapes in the blinding, punishing heat of midday. So they definitely sweated constantly and profusely. But fresh human sweat itself is largely completely odorless when it first leaves the pores of the body. The specific pungent smell we modernly associate with offensive body odor comes directly from the chemical interaction between that fresh sweat and the specific colonies of bacteria living locally on the skin. This is combined deeply with the metabolic byproducts of whatever bright natural foods we happen to be continuously consuming. In a highly interdependent prehistoric band, your specific personal organic smell was not considered an offensive social crime or an embarrassing failure of personal hygiene. It was an incredibly vital, continuous, nonverbal biological broadcast. Humans are extraordinarily sensitive to specific airborne chemical signals that carry complex, deeply important social information. We can literally and measurably smell acute fear and massive stress spikes in the sweat of others. This olfactory signal instantly triggers measurable corresponding changes in the internal neural states of the people who smell them. We can even subconsciously smell underlying genetic compatibility. Clinical studies have consistently demonstrated that people naturally rate the physical scent of individuals with vastly different immune system profiles as significantly more attractive. This phenomenon is essentially human evolution quietly and constantly doing incredibly complex mate selection mathematical calculations entirely below the level of our conscious awareness. Early ancient humans moving in tight, highly coordinated hunting groups would have been thoroughly bathed in this invisible olfactory social information continuously. Your unique physical scent told your close community exactly what you were feeling in that bright sunlit moment. It told them what specific wild resources you had been recently consuming. Crucially, it told them whether you were currently healthy or silently harboring an invisible sickness. To completely and artificially erase your natural personal scent in a dangerous prehistoric context would be a massive mistake. It would be the strange biological equivalent of making yourself completely invisible and unreadable to the very people who most desperately needed to understand you, because they constantly and unavoidably emitted this rich communicative chemical reality through their sweat. Ancient humans faced a huge problem. They had to successfully navigate an incredibly dangerous, unforgiving world, where massive, highly adapted predators were specifically and actively tracking that exact human scent. Early humans were, biologically speaking, a very soft, remarkably slow, and incredibly poorly armed prey animal. They lived directly alongside apex predators that were built specifically by nature to violently destroy things exactly like them. A terrifying prehistoric hyena the sheer size of a modern lion possessed an incredible olfactory system. It was perfectly tuned by evolution to detect the scent of a sweating, unwashed human being wandering through the dark. To survive this constant looming threat, ancient humans absolutely did not attempt the completely impossible task of masking their biological scent with artificial floral fragrances. Instead, they survived by staying intensely grouped together at all times. They relied heavily on the mathematical reality of the dilution effect, where simply existing within a tight, coordinated group dramatically dropped the statistical chance of any single individual being caught and consumed. More importantly, they masked their recognizable human scent naturally, continuously, and highly effectively. They used the overwhelming, thick, acrid smoke of the constant wood fires they religiously maintained for bright physical warmth and nighttime security. The heavy, deeply penetrating smell of burning wood smoke thoroughly permeated their unwashed hair, their thick animal hide clothing, and the very pores of their skin. This perpetual coating of ash and smoke acted as a powerful universal biological deterrent. Almost every single large, dangerous land predator on Earth possesses a deeply instinctive, hardwired evolutionary terror of fire and the choking smoke it produces. By choosing to smell constantly of burning wood rather than purely of vulnerable human sweat, they brilliantly cloaked their true biological signature in the terrifying scent of an uncontrollable natural disaster. Furthermore, they physically cleaned and maintained each other through deep continuous social interaction. Long before human evolutionary groups slowly grew so massive and considerably complex that they strictly required spoken language, our ancient primate ancestors maintained their absolutely critical social bonds by physically grooming one another. This vital daily process involved carefully picking through each other's hair and fur. They methodically spotted and removed tiny biting parasites, dried dirt, and small pieces of physical forest debris. This physical grooming behavior is incredibly time-consuming, requiring immense patience. It is highly physically intimate, and it successfully builds the essential psychological trust and complex political alliances necessary to keep the group functioning smoothly. Even as human beings eventually evolved highly sophisticated language to verbally groom many different individuals at once through storytelling and casual gossip, physical touch remained vital. Mutual bodily grooming almost certainly remained a foundational, unbreakable part of human social bonding and personal bodily hygiene. You absolutely did not retreat into a small, sterile, tiled room behind a locked, solid door to frantically clean your body in absolute isolation. You sat peacefully on the bright, warm dirt around a glowing, crackling campfire in the late afternoon. The specific people you trusted most in the entire dangerous world slowly helped keep your bright hair and skin clear of physical debris. This perfectly combined the practical baseline necessity of physical cleanliness with the absolute emotional and psychological necessity of deep physical connection. But eventually humans did genuinely invent the first iterations of artificial soap. The specific way they managed to do it represents a truly perfect example of ancient accidental practical observation. Ancient humans relentlessly hunted massive, extremely dangerous animals. They did this not just for their rich meat, but crucially for their highly nutritious bone marrow and dense heavy animal fat. Animal fat was the ultimate undisputed prehistoric survival currency. It reliably provided the massive necessary caloric energy. They also entirely and increasingly depended on the mastery of controlled fire. This was a profoundly transformative tool that kept terrifying nocturnal predators safely away in the dark. When deeply rendered animal fat violently drips into the alkaline, this is known scientifically as saponification. Early humans, substance created by mixing this specific combination of fat, they accidentally discovered the fundamental underlying chemistry of modern cleaning soap. Lack of modern hygiene privacy extended directly and logically into exactly how they slept every single night is a historically bizarre and genuinely very recent modern luxury. It instantly turned them into a completely motionless, functionally blind, and totally defenseless target for roaming nocturnal predators in shared crowded physical spaces. This incredibly close physical contact provided absolutely essential passive thermal benefit during freezing, unforgiving nights. It allowed them to effectively share precious body heat. This naturally created a rotating, informal, and highly effective system of continuous group vigilance. In this deeply intimate, profoundly interconnected, constantly smelling and sweating survival system simply had absolutely no logical place. Ancient humans lived their entire lives in tight-knit mobile bands where everybody knew absolutely everybody else through constant physical proximity and unending observation. The modern, highly marketed ideal. It would not have made any biological, logical, or social sense if it did. We require artificial plastic toothbrushes and harsh chemical paste today, precisely because we choose to eat a heavily processed modern diet. Our modern diet is completely saturated with soft, refined grains and engineered sugars. We merely live in a highly artificial, completely constructed modern environment. Artificial maintenance, just to keep our own bodies from turning violently against us. Scrubbing routine, try to remember something profound. You are not correcting a fundamental shameful flaw in the original brilliant human design. You are simply managing a complex modern problem that our ancient ancestors never had to face.